How does a site like the South Cove waterfront is an urban park, which is in construction now in the West Palm Beach Intercoastal along the waterfront project? How does that become, which is, it's of international and national importance, how does it become known to the public, not because a commissioner has to resign, because of Trump Tower or a group of people who don't want the public in front of their building. And it takes an article like this, which I'm sorry isn't showing. That's interesting. But this is an article in the West Palm Beach that took 4 reporters are assigned to this article to write about Jeff Koons' resignation. And it's the only mention of what the South Cove project really is and its importance to the community. So I'll stop with that and just say I think the challenge of bringing this to the public, these are stories that I do believe are very sexy. Not just these projects, but the stories of planning that's happening, the story of the flood issues, the seawater issues, many of the things we talked about today. They're vital to our understanding of how we live in a community and its press responsibility to bring it forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. So I actually want to piggyback on what you said. So Michael showed us some nice examples of things that might sell to newspapers and to the media. I think you also showed, although it didn't show up, the other way to do it is by a scandal.
Right.
So if we talk more about things like climate change and thinking about this area as a region, what is it that we as planners need to do to help you guys report on that? Jeff, Matt?
Well, I mean, I think one idea would, I don't know if there is a tightly knit organization that brings all of you together, but that might be an opportunity, and then to bring on board a person or a staff or contract out someone who knows how to craft these stories, who can be diligent about it, who can build relationships with individual reporters and editors, importantly, the gatekeepers of these decisions, and then utilize that rather than perhaps what may exist in many groups, which is a haphazard effort.
I would agree with all of that, and I would also say, though, I think something like that actually would be very effective with reporters. I don't know how many reporters you presented it to, but certainly I would find that compelling.
Right.
Looking at a parking garage, how it's, I mean, with all of those different elements, is something that that I can think of other reporters at the Herald would find very compelling. So I think a big part of it is really sticking to the merits and telling it in an understandable way, and using visuals is very helpful. And I think that by itself will be enormously effective, along with all the stuff Jeff talked about, developing relationships. All that.
I also might say that we have a team in our newsroom of various subtopics, and one of those subtopics is green-related stories. And we have a theme this week or next week on sustainability. So here's an opportunity maybe to pitch the parking garage. I've always been fascinated with parking garages. They can be so ugly, and yet others can be so cool looking. And what makes the difference? I mean, are there people mandating this kind of change? I think that'd be a great story, and I'll pitch it today. See what happens.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, what you're doing and what good planning is it's transformative, and I think any reporter is very, very interested in that. And certainly we're learning the stakes of bad planning, and how things can be so bad. I mean, the sprawl that we've seen, look what's happened in South Florida with the sprawl, and now we're seeing a move away from that to a certain degree. Well, I mean, that's from planning, and we can show in tangible ways how poor planning will have poor results.
Right. Traffic jams in West Broward, for example.
Yeah. Okay. Dr. Prosper.
Be calm this time. I know you can handle the truth. I guess the question is media more generally defined. So web pages. A lot of cities across the world are sort of doing things like Next Hamburg and sort of doing digital governance, digital media. Facebook, Twitter, those kinds of things. And I just want to hear your opinion about these other than newspaper and TV media.
Well, that's the future. the clock will not turn back. The publisher of the New York Times said he'll be glad on the last day they print the last edition of the New York Times that the whole thing goes online. In fact, I think they just reached a milestone where either more than half the revenue or more than half the readers were now online. I forget which one. So there is, of course, a dramatic shift, and it will not stop. Now, the transition will be enormously painful, and is for us right now enormously painful. You know, magnificent reporters are being laid off all across the country. So the news media is scrambling for a new business model. It may be something like the St. Pete Times, which is a nonprofit backed by a charity. It may be something backed by universities. It may be something backed by private funding. ProPublica just has already been winning massive awards for its investigative journalism. It's an online-only, brand-new media organization. So we don't know what the new form will be, but it's something will rise from the ashes.
I certainly wholeheartedly agree with that. I mean, the change is not going to stop, and it's going to continue. And certainly, I mean, in a lot of ways, I mean, right now, even despite all the wrenching changes, because of this change going from print to online, traditional revenue sources for newspapers, at least, are either going completely away or shrinking. And that's, as a result, we've seen news organizations shrinking. But nevertheless, with that said, our reach has never been greater. And, you know, we can reach people, you know, all over the world through our website. And so it's just trying to figure out that revenue model going forward.
Okay, quickly, but it's also a much more diffuse pattern of communication.
Yes, it's much more diffuse, and obviously, you know, our contention, and Jeff, maybe you share this view, is that certainly, you know, I think it's a very good thing that there's large participation and it's very diffuse, but I hope that there will always be a role for the professional journalist and providing news. I don't think individuals with blogs and tweets will be able to replace the role of the professional reporter, although their presence is obviously a very good thing.
I mean, I guess I'm looking for new models.
If I could just interject, I like to point to the fact that we maybe keep the discussion about the local realm and local scale. And I'm very impressed with Charles' comments in his introduction about an organization that goes to meet with editorial boards and sits down with them and explains. And many times when I've talked to reporters, the comment back is very similar to Jeff's of, I have to deal with my editor. I wish I could, but there's the editor. To hear someone like Charles going in and his organization having the ability to walk in, and a planning organization like APA, going in and having the ability to sit down with editors and with folks to educate them about the importance of these things in our community is vital. So I appreciate that.
One thing I think we've got to do too is recognize, and Tim Chapin talked a little about it, we've got a much more diverse population than we've ever had. We don't make special messages, or at least we have in the past, to the elderly community. We don't make special efforts to bring the Hispanic culture into the planning process. To continue to ignore that, I think we're going to do that at our peril.
This is a great time for me to do one little plug for the conference coming up in October of 2011, the Society of Environmental Journalists. These are freelancers, newspaper, print, radio, online, digital, photographers. These are journalists who cover issues of the environment, no matter what they are, planning or, you know, all kinds of those. In fact, the president of our board was a planning reporter for the Baltimore Sun. So there'll be 1,000 of these in one room at one time in downtown Miami. For anybody who believes they have an important message to get out, there's an opportunity that you should not let you pass.
Very good. Can I mention something real quick too? And I just wanted to add that, you know, despite all the cutbacks, for example, that we've had at the Miami Herald, we have a real estate reporter, we have an environmental reporter, and we have a planning reporter. So we're you know, and we still have an investigative team that's working on, you know, 6 to 8 month long projects. So while resources have shrunk, they're still very much there. And I'm happy, by the way, to pass along the names of all of them if you care to reach them.
All right, Anthony?
Sure. I hear one model of discussion going on here with planners, the media, and public. The model I hear is that planners have to better communicate with the media, and the media have to report to the public. The underlying assumption is that the public needs to be educated by professionals. Why don't you consider a flip side of this, is that the planners need to have a mutual education with the public, and the outcome of that mutual education of the public will report to the media, not the media reporting to the public. Because the job of the media is actually to reflect what's going on in the public, not to educate the public. So I think you have it backwards. You know, it's more kind of like Kremlin-style dialogue you have going on right now. So I watched earlier this morning where I think Professor Mamano, if I pronounced your name correctly, she talked about constituency and precincts. That planners should, in the wake of the fear of hometown democracy, should strongly consider creating precincts or constituencies where they have a mutual education, since the Charles Haar sense of mutual education, where they're going into schools, they're going to churches, not just because of the project of the day, but in general. We do this with sex education. We go and talk to kids about something very uncomfortable. But we should do about the urban forum as well, and planners should proactively engage themselves with the constituency under precinct, and that will stimulate the public to tell the media what's going on. And that will put pressure on the editors. Hey, I'm getting phone calls for this. You got to cover this. So I think this model you have, professional to professional, interpreted to the public, I think is flawed. That's something you find in a tyrannical system, and people see that right through that. They see the newspapers are irrelevant. So I think we're flipping that. Thank you.
I want to respond to that. I think your comment's very good. And I've seen actually planning organization, one of the largest ones in our area, TCR, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Commission, run workshops and charrettes in towns. They did one in Del Rey. We call those charades. And in many ways that, you know, professional listening to the public is a very controlled and contrived event, because there's already an answer that they want to hear. So if this is happening as you are stating, and I very strongly agree with you, and it is the way we work, we want to go into a community and let them know what's possible first, because we know things as professionals that folks don't know. So if you ask people, do you want it red or yellow, they're going to say, well, I like yellow better than red, and some will say I like red. But if you show them what is really the full range of possibility on a project and what kind of networks can interact in these projects that are often very difficult for a community to grasp and get their hands around, then you can have that kind of dialogue. And the press can play a very important part in illuminating what those possibilities are, what's happened in other communities, what are the precedents. But if you come in as a professional with the point of view that I'm going to sell this and hear what the public has to say about it, that I'd have a problem with.
Your comments are really insightful, and in fact, there's a large percentage of reporters, at least that I know of anecdotally, agree with you, and to a great extent, I do too. I mean, clearly, many journalists believe it's not, as Neil posed in one of his questions for us, does not have a duty to educate the public. We simply report the news. Now, the outcome of that might be an important education on a particular topic, but you're right. We reflect what's happening. We reflect. It's our job to reflect what people are thinking and doing, and of course the vast majority of our stories do come from viewers and readers. Certainly investigative tips like that as well. Now there of course may be the occasional story where nobody knew about it and it's just an amazing gee whiz story, but absolutely agree with you that it's our job to reflect what the public is doing and thinking and saying.
My name is Tremel Gomes. I'm the news director with Florida Public Radio based in Tallahassee, and I just wanted to co-sign Jeff and Matthew, and really thank you, Michael, because that's what we look for, like that presentation right there. Thanks. Letting us know what the story is, like, you know, contacting the reporter. As I was sitting here through the conference, like, you know, if you guys hear us reporting on Amendment 4, there's nothing, like when you look at a reporter's byline, you see their name and their, like, you know, their contact information. Don't be shy to contact the reporter. Like, suggest another story, suggest another angle, like, you know, keep the discussion going.